If we shat in a can and tipped it onto our boom or onto the gutter on our road every morning, we'd be fined. And this is what these guys are doing every minute of the day. They're shitting on our environment.
You know, I come from a generation where we haven't really experienced the lake in the way that our parents' generation did.
There's no denying there's more work that needs to be done on the lake, and there's lots of actions happening around enabling that to occur.
And 100% do we see a need for improvement? Yes.
Because if your environment is sick, your people, your community, whether it's Maori or non, they all become sick.
If you want to really address the problem here, you've got to address the causes. And I don't have a vested interest in it. I don't make money out of saying this or not saying this.
It's the lake that's dividing a community. The demise of Lake Horowhenua has been on the radar for decades. From a distance, it's a picture-perfect postcard, but up close, the reality is very different. North of Wellington lies acres of rich alluvial plains, and right next to Levin is one of the most polluted lakes in the country, Lake Horowhenua. Surprisingly, the lake's catchment is small, and so are the streams and drains that flow into it. But among them are New Zealand's second and fourth dirtiest waterways. Christine Moriarty is a local resident, fighting to restore the health of the lake. She's frustrated at the lack of action by Horizons Regional Council, whose job is to protect the lake.
The buck stops with the Regional Council, and the Regional Council are not only not listening, they've actually taken sides against us who are trying to get them to do the right thing, and now we're the bad guys. And it's just not on.
She took us on a tour of the lake, pointing out some of the major causes of pollution, among them stormwater runoff from a nearby subdivision and an industrial drain that ends up in the lake.
This is from our industrial area. Now the Horizons do not test this water. We've asked them to, but they say because it runs into the Arawhata, they test the Arawhata. But this is disgraceful.
Christine also blames a combination of intensive farming and agriculture that farms across the sensitive catchment. She says Horizons improvements, like the sediment trap filtering New Zealand's second most polluted waterway, fail to address the source of contaminants.
Basically ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. A stream starts as a spring, and in less than 2 kilometres it becomes the second filthiest in the country. That should make it one of the easiest to clean, because most streams are miles and miles and miles, or kilometres long, and you don't know where it's coming in. But that should make it incredibly easy. But it's just common sense. If you're going to clean the water, you clean it before it enters waterways.
Logan Brown is the freshwater manager for Horizons Regional Council.
So this is kind of at the end of a catchment, and there's a whole lot of work occurring with landowners further up in the catchment around reducing sediment loss that comes from land, and this can kind of be considered that kind of end polishing type thing. But once again, sediment trap, quick to build, 6 months to construct it and have it operational. But land use changes further up in the catchment take a longer time to kind of be implemented. So some short-term stuff we can do straight away, so this is this intervention, and then some long-term stuff happening further up in the catchment.
Another solution proposed by Horizons is a weed harvester, which clears the noxious weed that covers the lake each spring. If cleared before the dead weed rots to the bottom, it hopes to stop the toxic algae bloom in summer. It seemed like a good idea, but the weed harvester was stopped in its tracks by a few locals who objected to it.
It's one we've been trying to get in place for the last 2 to 3 years, and have had legal challenges a lot of the way through there. That is one of the ones that weed harvesting put in place. It breaks a cycle that occurs within the lake. So if we can do that weed harvesting, that toxic algae won't be there. There will still be algae in the lake, but it won't be toxic.
Logan says the solution is to reduce sediment, which contains nitrates and phosphates running into the lake.
There's no denying, you can look at any of the data, that there is a need to do more. It's just what that more is a good question. I don't know if we necessarily have the answers for what that more is. People can always do more. It comes down to a cost thing, and people will do stuff as budgets or regulations require. and there's other things happening further up in the catchment that we all know will help get us there. But how much more needs to be done, I couldn't give you an answer on that really.
The lake is owned by the descendants of a small group of Mōpoko tribe, who set up the Lake Horowhenua Trust to administer it.
I've never really swum in the lake, and my children have never really been down to the lake because of all the negativity and the issues with water quality. So, you know, I want to see a vibrant lake, a resource that our people are really proud of and want to share with others and want to get others involved in its protection.
Since 2013, the Trust has made several improvements with Horizons, such as planting thousands of native trees, introducing a fish pass into the lake, and fencing off kilometres of waterways. But as with the weed harvester, the Trust reached an impasse with legal challenges and disagreement over who governs it.
There are always going to be people who, no matter what you do, are not satisfied. And you can kind of understand that. Some people have genuine reasons for that and others are disingenuous, and that's unfortunate, but at the end of the day we've got a mission here.
While the owners wait for that legal process, one thing they can all agree on is that it's taking too long.
You know, we kind of share that impatience really, and I understand where it comes from. You know, we want the lake cleaned up and we want it done yesterday.
Lake Horowhenua is dying, says DOC, Department of Conservation. Well, that was in 1992, but look at the lake today. It's worse. I mean, if I had my way and they did it properly and were stopping all the pollutions and contamination going into the Lake Horowhenua and the Hakeo stream, this lake will be cleaned up in 5 years.
Self-described lone wolf and mana whenua, Charles Rudd has spent decades fighting for the health of the lake, for his tribe and the community.
The bank is collapsing and all that. All this area is wahi tapu. That makes it worse. So you get these experts, they think they know what they're doing, they know nothing. I mean, the Horowhenua district is the most contaminated, polluted district in the whole country, mate. It is. They do not like talking about heavy metal. The heavy metal is cancer-causing stuff. And this area of Horowhenua is bad for people with cancer and other sicknesses. And you can put it back on the regional council and the other territorial authorities like the district council, you can put it on them. Instead of them blaming the poor old farmer again, I don't blame the farmers. Maybe in the past, yes, but not now.
Someone who doesn't let farmers off the hook is New Zealand's most outspoken freshwater scientist, Dr. Mike Joy. He spent much of his career battling to improve our waterways and hold polluters to account.
Look around the landscape. I mean, I just drove through it. There's just, you know, hundreds of hectares of intensive horticulture, monocultures, worked up paddocks just constantly being ploughed up and turned over, heaps and heaps of nutrients and pesticides, very industrial scale farming happening around here. The effect of that is that when there's a big rainfall event, all the sediment washes off into the drains, the sediment's rich in phosphorus, you've got nitrogen being put onto the land that's flowing down through here, plus those pesticides and things, and the whole lot making its way into this lake. It's vandalism.
And he agrees once the pollution gets to the lake, it's too late.
You don't need to put a sediment trap at the bottom. You should stop the sediment from coming in right through the catchment. I mean, this is valuable soil that's being washed off here. This is our future. That just proves the short-termism, that the idea that you just catch it at the bottom rather than not losing it from the landscape in the first place. And exactly the same with the nutrients.
Joy says it's not just farmers that need to accept responsibility.
If any district council or city council thinks that it's acceptable to have stormwater run straight off into a body of water, then they're totally failing in their role, you know. But I know what they're up against, because if they start, you know, fixing these things up and treating them properly, then there's a lot of money involved in it, and then it's going to be rates increases and they'll get voted out. So the system we have, once again, just encourages bad practice, it encourages living for now and leaving the problem for future generations.
The stormwater runoff in question is under the control of a different council, Horticulture District. We put Dr. Joy's claims to the new infrastructure manager.
Well, I don't have as much scientific knowledge as the gentleman you're talking about, but all I can say is that the community was built here on the lakes, so you know, we really can't move the community, so we're dealing with it as best we can.
Horticulture District Council has a long history of polluting the lake. From 1962, it dumped treated human waste into the lake for 25 years. Andrew Grant, who's only been on the job for 2 weeks, is already promising a fast and pragmatic approach to reducing pollution from Levin.
So all I can say is at the moment, yes, there's a problem, and council's acknowledged it, so if those people have concerns, I can say, well, council's listened to you. They've allocated a large amount of money, and historically from my career, like the amount of money allocated here is significant, and council's taken that on board, so if they are unhappy, council's been listening and we're going to do something.
Along with stormwater polluting the lake, many residents blame the region's market garden industry. Woodhaven Gardens is the biggest market gardener in the Horticulture District, employing up to 250 people and bringing tens of millions of dollars into Levin.
And 100% is it in the place that we'd like it to be? No. And 100% do we see a need for improvement? Yes. So, and we put our hands in our hearts and say we're going to do everything that we can while remaining economically sustainable and competitive within our industry to lower the impact that we have on those waterways, because we want to see them improve.
The agriculture industry in itself brings over $100 million to the region and has been a lifeline for employment for a century.
Unfortunately for the region, we have a very environmentally sensitive geography here, where you have a lot of land area draining into waterways that don't have a high level of flow, and therefore the concentrations of pollution can go up quite high without actually the pollutant load being very high. And that's an important thing for people to understand. We acknowledge the fact that we have an environmental impact in our operations, and we will contribute to some of the poor water quality that we see in the Arafura stream. In terms of getting solutions, it needs to be a real community-based solution though. There's no one enterprise or one industry that is 100% responsible for the water quality issues that we're seeing.
Woodhaven has already made changes to reduce pollution, including retiring land, establishing buffer zones and sediment traps.
This is an example, and it's not going to look great, but this is the realities of market gardening, is that there is mud and there's turbidity in the water. But of a really simple mitigation process that can help a whole lot of silt and stop it from entering the waterways. So we've got these silt traps sort of every 10 or 15 metres throughout our drainage network, and what that does is that slows the flow of any water and lets the silt start to drop out the bottom. Now you can see here the amount of silt that we then stop from entering the Arafura stream in Lake Horowhenua.
Woodhaven are also planning an additional wetland and large-scale sediment trap that will decrease nitrate runoff by up to 90%. But there's a big stumbling block. Last year, the Environment Court ruled that many agricultural consents issued by Horizons were not lawful. That's left many farmers in limbo.
Now, whether or not that it ends up that commercial vegetable growing becomes an economically viable and sustainable practice in this region, and we're able to achieve what we want with the waterways, I think that the jury is still out.
There's currently no pathway to consent for vegetable production anywhere in the Horizons region. So before they invest in larger scale anti-pollution schemes, farmers need certainty of their future in the region. But residents say time is running out, so they've written to the government asking them to step in.
The letter is asking for the Minister to remove the CE of the Regional Council and put in a Commissioner.
Environment Minister David Parker says it's not central government's role to get involved, but in this instance, he's making an exception.
There's been a bit of a stalemate. I asked the council and some of the critics of the council to meet in my office recently to try and broker a way forward so that we resolve the underlying issues. The Ministry for the Environment, at my request, has appointed a planner and a lawyer to help find a way through because we need to do better in that catchment.
Parker says farmers in the Horticulture district need to be better supported by Horizons to find a way forward.
Well, they've got all the legislative authority they need to do their job, and it is their duty to do their job. Not all of these decisions can be taken at central government level. These are devolved to councils, and it's their responsibility to put things right.
I've been involved in a number of court cases where trying to get them to apply their own rules, let alone central government's rules. I mean, there really is a reluctance in that council to do anything that affects farmers. So, their record is hands off, and having to be taken to court to apply their rules around that. So, I mean, it's clear that they're not going to do anything unless they have to.
But Horizon says that's simply not true.
We've been working with the horticultural growers and about the best practice on land, so that's the way in which they cultivate the land, having riparian margins so that the runoff can't get directly into the streams. So for Dr. Joy to come out with statements that we're not doing anything in that catchment, he needs to come and talk to us and get himself informed.
With a complex environment, Horizons have their work cut out for them. To restore Lake Horowhenua back to health, they must navigate and motivate businesses, the district council and residents to bring the lake back from the brink. And Horizons can only do that with the cooperation of all of the community.
Perhaps we might just have to protest a bit more. Put our bodies on the line. This is the start of a campaign that's not going to stop.
I think there is at times a perception that all farmers are just cowboys and all they're out there to do is make as much money as possible. That's not our philosophy to farming, especially not at Woodhaven Gardens. We're trying to create a farming environment and a farming system that's sustainable for future generations, that produces healthy food at an affordable price for New Zealanders. We're not about trying to bastardise the system to get a quick gain. We want sustainable results.
It's very much a partnership. I think kind of a positive story. There's a lot of focus on the negative stuff, but actually there's a lot of cool stuff happening down here. And it's easy to focus on the negative, but actually we should just put that to one side and do the positive stuff, because that makes a difference.
I'm immensely proud of what we've been able to achieve over the last 5-6 years. And by no means have we got to the end of the journey. This is just the beginning, and it's going to be for somebody else and some point in the near future to take over and continue that mission.
You've got to walk it and understand and be aware what nature's got or hasn't got. It's not what you achieve, it's what you haven't achieved. That's the thing.
Well, it's true that more intensive land use practices are the main cause of the degradation of water quality in our rivers and lakes throughout New Zealand, and in the case of Lake Horowhenua. Lake Horowhenua is actually one of the curlier problems to fix. So if we fix that, we'll be showing the rest of New Zealand how it can be done.